The crash echoed through the glass-walled conference room like an explosion. For a split second, no one breathed. My prototype, 6 months of late nights, 12 redesigns, and 2 maxed-out credit cards worth of materials, lay in jagged pieces across the polished floor. Garbage. Mr. Huxley RCO spat, his face red with rage. This is what you've been wasting company resources on. You're a waste of salary, Michelle. The room went still. The client, Mr. Raymond Carter, founder of one of the largest rehabilitation tech companies in the country, watched silently. His expression was unreadable. His hands folded neatly on the table. Around him, our senior engineers and project leads avoided my eyes, their faces pale. I couldn't move. My mind refused to process the scene. The shattered parts, the adaptive joint frame, the carbon fiber exoskeleton, the delicate mechanical pulley, all of it represented me. My effort, my belief, my future. And now it was just debris under Mr. Huxley's shoes. Sir, I managed, my voice trembling. You didn't even let me explain the calibration. He cut me off with a wave. Explain to who? Do you see yourself standing here embarrassing this company in front of our biggest client? Laughter rippled from one of the executives. A nervous, sycophantic sound. I felt my cheeks burn. But then something happened I didn't expect. Mr. Carter turned to me calmly, deliberately. His eyes, sharp and observant, studied the scattered pieces, then lifted to meet mine. May I have your contact details, please? He asked. The room froze again. Even Huxley blinked. My contact. I stammered. Yes, Carter said, extending a hand. For follow-up. I hesitated only a second before pulling one of my personal cards from my notebook. My hands were shaking. I handed it to him directly, watching as he slipped it into his jacket pocket with quiet precision. Huxley forced a smile. Mr. Carter, don't worry. We'll have a real team start from scratch. Michelle's little experiments don't represent our company's standards. Carter's eyes never left mine. I see, he said evenly. Then I'll be in touch. That was it. He stood, shook hands mechanically with the others and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded to me like the end of everything. Huxley turned on me instantly. Clean this up, he barked. And Michelle, take the rest of the day off. HR will schedule your reassignment. Reassignment. I knew what that meant. A demotion or worse, being quietly pushed out. I knelt down, my throat tightening as I picked up the broken fragments of my work. Each piece cut into my palms. Tiny reminders of every hour I'd believed I was building something meaningful. Leave it, Huxley snapped. Maintenance will handle it. These are custom parts, I whispered. He smirked. For a custom failure. Then he walked away. When the room emptied, I stayed on my knees, staring at the mess. For a long time, all I could hear was the faint hum of the AC and the echo of my heartbeat. This wasn't supposed to happen. My design, a fully mechanical mobility assist frame, didn't rely on power or software. Could have worked anywhere. In hospitals, in war zones, in remote clinics without electricity. Could have changed lives. And now it was gone. I sat on the floor until the janitor entered with a broom. You okay, miss? He asked softly. I nodded, even though I wasn't. I gathered the few undamaged pieces into a small box and walked out without looking back. Outside, the city felt louder than usual. Cars blared. People hurried past and I stood there, invisible among them, clutching the box like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My phone buzzed. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the name on the screen. Raymond Carter. Froze. Hello, I answered, trying to steady my voice. Miss Alvarez, he said, his tone measured. I'd like to speak further about your design. Privately. My pulse quickened. I don't understand, Mr. Huxley. Mr. Huxley, he interrupted. Made it clear what he values. I'm interested in what you built. I gripped the box tighter. I can't share company property. I'm not asking for schematics, Carter said. Just conversation. I believe your concept has potential. Meet me tomorrow, 10 a.m. at my office. No materials, no designs, just ideas. Before I could reply, the line went dead. I stood there in the middle of the street, rain beginning to fall, the box of broken parts pressed against my chest. It wasn't over. It couldn't be over. That night, I laid the salvaged pieces on my kitchen table, each one glinting under the dim light. My hands still shook, but not from fear anymore, from something sharper. Resolved. They had taken my dignity, my recognition, and almost my belief in myself, but not my mind, not my invention. And if Mr. Huxley thought he could destroy me in front of the world, he was about to learn what I was capable of building in the shadows. The next morning, I woke to the gray light of dawn and the sound of rain tapping softly against my window. I hadn't slept much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mr. Huxley's hand smashing my prototype, the pieces flying in slow motion. Then I'd see Mr. Carter's face, calm, thoughtful, unshaken. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the call, that someone like Raymond Carter wouldn't really be interested in me, an engineer whose career had just imploded in a single meeting. But at 9:58 a.m., I stood outside his company's headquarters, a sleek glass building on the riverfront, clutching my umbrella and trying not to look like someone whose entire life had just fallen apart. The receptionist smiled politely. "Mr. Carter is expecting you, Miss Alvarez. 11th floor." When the elevator doors opened, he was already waiting. No assistants, no formalities, just him. "Michelle," he said, offering a hand. "Thank you for coming." His office overlooked the city. It was minimalist with sketches of prosthetic designs framed along one wall. "I'm not going to waste your time," he began, motioning for me to sit. "Yesterday, I saw something that shouldn't have been dismissed. That prototype. You were on to something. A mechanical solution that doesn't rely on power or electronics. You were thinking globally, not just commercially." I hesitated. "Mr. Carter, the design technically belongs to the company. Anything I built while employed is theirs." "Yes," he finished. "I know how these contracts work. I'm not asking for blueprints or proprietary files. I just want to hear what you see when you think about mobility." That question stopped me. Nobody had ever asked it like that before. Not my colleagues, not my bosses. I found myself talking about accessibility in rural areas, about how electronic prosthetics fail when batteries die, about how a simple, durable design could restore independence to people who had been left behind by modern tech. Carter listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned forward. "I want you to have a space to keep developing this idea independently. My foundation supports engineers who create practical solutions for real-world challenges. We'll provide tools, workshop access, even advisors if you need them. No contracts yet, just a chance to build freely." My instinct was to say no. Sounded too good to be real. "If my company finds out." "They won't," he said calmly. "You won't use their data or resources, just your mind." I exhaled slowly. For the first time in months, hope didn't feel impossible. "I'll do it," I said quietly. That evening, I took the metro across town to a small industrial space Carter had arranged, a shared workshop used by independent engineers and fabricators. It wasn't fancy, but the air smelled like metal, resin, and possibility. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived 2 lives. By day, I sat at my corporate desk, assigned to meaningless process reports that no one would ever read. Huxley barely looked at me, but I could sense he was watching, waiting for me to quit. By night I built. Carter's team had introduced me to a machinist named Leon, a quiet older man who'd spent 30 years repairing medical equipment in developing countries. He watched me struggle one night with a stubborn joint mechanism and said, "You're over-engineering it. Needs to survive dust, rain, kids. Think simpler." That sentence reshaped everything. I stripped the design back to its core. A frame that could be repaired with a wrench and a screwdriver, adjustable without electronics, adaptable to different bodies. Each night I left the workshop exhausted but alive. For the first time since joining Huxley Dynamics, I felt like an engineer again. Then one Thursday afternoon I nearly lost everything. I was at my desk when an email popped up from HR. Mandatory review meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m. My stomach dropped. I opened the message. Vague wording, no agenda, requested presence, but I recognized the timing. Tomorrow was the quarterly review with the board. Huxley had probably decided to make an example of me before the executives. That night I went to the workshop anyway. Leon looked up as I entered, rain dripping from my coat. Long day, I nodded, tightening my ponytail. Might be my last day at that company. He smiled faintly. Maybe that's not a bad thing. I worked for hours tuning the adaptive suspension system, adding a dust-sealed joint that clicked perfectly into place. When I stepped back at 2 a.m. covered in grease and fatigue, the prototype stood finished, functional, beautiful. It wasn't company property. Every part had been machined from scratch, every measurement recalculated from memory. It was mine. I snapped a few photos, uploaded the specifications to a secure drive, and sat on the floor beside it, listening to the hum of the workshop. Tomorrow they might fire me. But tonight, I'd rebuilt what they tried to destroy. Before leaving, I sent one short message to Carter. "It's ready." He replied instantly. Perfect timing. "Bring it tomorrow to the Industry Advancement Forum at 2 p.m. Huxley will be there." My breath caught. Tomorrow I might lose my job or I might finally be seen. Either way, something was about to break again. But this time it wouldn't be me. The morning of the forum began with silence. No rain, no city noise, just the low hum of nerves under my skin. I hadn't slept at all. The prototype stood in my living room, gleaming faintly in the early light. Every joint and hinge caught the sun like a promise. At 8:30, I put on my only tailored suit and tied my hair into a low bun. Then I slipped the mechanical frame, my rebuilt design, carefully into its protective case. My hands trembled as I latched it shut. Before heading to the forum, I still had one obligation left. The HR meeting at Huxley Dynamics. The office was too quiet when I arrived. People avoided my eyes as if they already knew what was coming. The receptionist gave a rehearsed smile. "They're waiting for you in conference room B." Inside, Mr. Huxley sat at the head of the table with 2 HR representatives. The mood was formal, almost sterile. "Michelle," Huxley began smoothly, as if yesterday's humiliation had never happened. "We've reviewed your recent performance and decided that your current role doesn't align with company priorities. We're offering you a reassignment with reduced scope or a separation package." I stared at him. "You're demoting me." He gave a sympathetic half-smile. "I'm offering you stability after what happened. Some might say I'm being generous." Something inside me went cold. "You mean after you destroyed my work in front of a client?" Huxley's expression hardened. "You're out of line. That project was unsanctioned, over budget, and fundamentally flawed." I took a slow breath. "Then why did the client ask for my contact details?" That got him. For just a second, his jaw tightened. "Carter doesn't understand the market. His foundation makes donations, not progress. Don't get any ideas, Michelle. You signed a non-compete and confidentiality agreement. You try anything, and I'll make sure your career ends here." I held his gaze. "You already tried." He didn't like that. His eyes narrowed. "You have until Monday to decide. Reassignment or resignation." Understood. "Thank you for the clarity, sir." Then I left. By the time I reached the industry forum at 1:45 p.m., the tension in my chest had built into a solid weight. The event was held in a sprawling convention center near the harbor. Banners lined the entrance. Innovation for global accessibility. Inside, the air buzzed with energy. Booths displaying high-end robotics, exoskeleton prototypes, gleaming prosthetic limbs powered by AI. Everything shimmered with screens and electricity. My mechanical design, by contrast, looked almost humble. Mr. Carter met me near the entrance, wearing the same calm expression as always. "You made it," he said. "I almost didn't." "Good thing you did." He smiled faintly. You're our surprise guest. What do you mean, our? You'll see. He led me through the maze of displays to the main auditorium. At the center stood a small demonstration platform. Engineers, investors, and healthcare leaders filled the seats. On the stage, a host was introducing the afternoon session. When I saw who sat in the front row, my pulse spiked. Mr. Huxley, perfectly composed, chatting with two board members. Carter leaned toward me. He doesn't know you're presenting. Stay calm. Before I could react, the host's voice boomed. Our next demonstration is from an independent engineer whose approach to mobility may redefine what accessibility means worldwide. Please welcome Michelle Alvarez. For a moment I couldn't move. The crowd's polite applause echoed like static. Then I felt Carter's hand on my shoulder. Go! I stepped onto the stage. My legs felt wooden, but my voice surprisingly didn't shake. Good afternoon, I began. This design is called the Aura Frame. It's a fully mechanical mobility system that functions without power, software, or charging. It adapts to terrain and user weight using simple physics. No batteries, no circuits, just engineering. Gasps and murmurs spread as I unveiled the prototype. The frame unfolded smoothly, the joints adjusting automatically as I demonstrated. I explained the mechanics, the load distribution, the self-locking joints, the sealed bearings designed for dust resistance. This can be manufactured at 1/3 the cost of electronic models, I said, and maintained anywhere in the world with a wrench and basic tools. I invited a volunteer from the audience, a man using a cane, to test it. He hesitated, then stood, curiosity overcoming caution. When he placed his hands on the frame and began to walk, the system adjusted instantly to his stride. The audience leaned forward. The man smiled. It's effortless, he said softly. A ripple of applause spread through the hall. I caught sight of Huxley's face. Shock first, then fury. After the demonstration, questions poured in. Doctors asked about adaptability, investors about patents. I answered each one steadily, explaining that the design was independent, personally developed, and open to collaboration. When the applause finally died down, Carter joined me on stage. Thank you, Michelle, he said into the mic. Innovation doesn't always need electricity. It just needs courage. The audience stood clapping, cameras flashed. Huxley didn't move. As soon as the session ended, he pushed through the crowd, face pale, eyes burning. What the hell was that? He hissed. Proof, I said quietly, that you broke the wrong prototype. He looked around, reporters, cameras, his board members whispering. And for the first time he looked afraid. 30 minutes later, as I packed up my equipment backstage, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Michelle. Huxley's voice was low, desperate. We need to talk. Please don't sign anything with Carter. Come back to the office. I'm begging you. I paused, watching the crowd still buzzing outside. It was strange hearing him beg. And in that moment, I realized the power he'd used to control me had never really been his. Had always been mine. The night after the forum, my phone didn't stop buzzing. Messages from former coworkers, LinkedIn requests, emails from journalists, even old university professors who had seen the demonstration online. It was surreal. But between all the noise, one message stood out. From Mr. Huxley, 11:47 p.m. We need to meet first thing tomorrow. There are serious legal implications for what you did. I read it twice, my stomach tightening. Legal implications. Of course, he wouldn't go down quietly. By morning, the story had spread across multiple tech news outlets. Independent engineer showcases groundbreaking non-electric mobility frame. My name in the headline, my face in the photos, my prototype front and center. They called it a quiet revolution in assisted technology. And behind those articles, I could feel the growing panic inside Huxley Dynamics. At 9 a.m., my former colleague Priya called. Michelle, are you okay? Things are insane here. The board called an emergency meeting. Huxley's losing it. I tried to steady my voice. Did they say why? They're furious. Carter's foundation contacted them last night, apparently offering partnership talks, but only if you're involved. The board's demanding explanations and Huxley's spinning stories faster than ever. Decide. Let me guess. He's saying the prototype was company property. Exactly. But the documentation doesn't match. There's no record of any internal design submission under your name or his. He told people you abandoned the concept months ago. Of course he did. Be careful, Michelle. He's dangerous when he feels cornered. By 10:30, my email pinged again from the board secretary. Subject: attendance requested. Emergency executive session. 12 p.m. Your presence is requested regarding the Aura frame demonstration and intellectual property inquiry. I stared at the screen. They wanted me there. Carter called moments later. They'll try to intimidate you, he said evenly. Keep calm. You have the truth and documentation. That's all you need. I took a cab across town to the company headquarters I'd left only days earlier. As the elevator climbed, I felt the same knot in my stomach I used to feel before every review meeting. Except this time the fear was different, sharper, controlled. When the doors opened, 2 security guards escorted me to the executive boardroom. The air inside was heavy. Around the long table sat the board members, the general counsel, and at the far end, Mr. Huxley. His face looked strained, sleepless eyes, forced composure. Miss Alvarez, the chairwoman began. Thank you for coming on short notice. We have questions about the AUR prototype you presented yesterday. He nodded. Of course. Huxley jumped in immediately. Before we begin, I'd like to clarify that Miss Alvarez's design work was developed during her employment under company resources. Her public presentation was unauthorized and in violation of her contract. The chairwoman raised a hand. We'll hear all sides. She turned to me. Miss Alvarez, your response. I met her gaze. The design presented at the forum was my independent work, built entirely outside company hours and with personal or third-party resources. The concept predates my employment and is fully documented in my graduate research. The general counsel adjusted her glasses. Do you have proof of that? Yes, I said, handing over a folder. Inside were dated schematics, thesis excerpts, and time-stamped design notes from 3 years ago. These documents show the development timeline and the original adaptive joint concept. Huxley leaned forward, voice rising. This is irrelevant. She still used company methodology and exposure gained through our clients. That's theft of opportunity. One of the board members frowned. Mr. Huxley, is it true that you presented similar mechanical mobility concepts at last month's healthcare summit as your own? Huxley blinked. That was an internal strategy update. The chairwoman turned to another member. We've reviewed the transcript from that presentation. The phrasing, my team's abandoned mechanical prototypes, appears to refer to Ms. Alvarez's work. The room went silent. Huxley's jaw flexed. You're misinterpreting it. I was summarizing our direction, not claiming ownership. Carter, who had been silent until now, spoke from the side of the room. With respect, Mr. Huxley, your direction almost buried technology that could change thousands of lives. If Michelle hadn't rebuilt it, you'd still be calling it impractical. The board chair nodded slowly. It seems the situation goes beyond a contract issue. It speaks to leadership judgment. Color drained from Huxley's face. You can't be serious. I've run this division for 8 years. Then you should understand accountability, she said quietly. Effective immediately, your administrative access is suspended pending a full review. The words hit like a thunderclap. Huxley stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. This is ridiculous. You're taking her side. A junior engineer who went rogue. No one responded. The silence was answer enough. Security escorted him out. He didn't look back. After he left, the chairwoman turned to me. Miss Alvarez, we owe you an apology. The board recognizes the potential of your design. We'd like to discuss forming a new division dedicated to sustainable mechanical mobility under your leadership in partnership with Mr. Carter's foundation. For a moment I couldn't speak. Everything, the humiliation, the sleepless nights, the shattered prototype, crashed back in a wave. I accept, I said finally, my voice steady. Carter smiled faintly. Good. Then let's build something that lasts. When the meeting ended, I stepped outside into the afternoon sunlight. The city looked the same, but nothing felt the same. For the first time, I wasn't an employee fighting for approval. I was the one setting the direction. And as I looked up at the skyline, I realized something simple but powerful. Sometimes justice doesn't come through revenge. Comes through visibility. When the truth stands on its own, undeniable and unbreakable. 3 months later, I walked through the new research facility for the first time. It wasn't glamorous, just a converted warehouse on the edge of the city, but it hummed with purpose. The walls were lined with sketches, 3D models, and half-assembled frames. The sound of drilling and laughter filled the air. We'd named it Aura Labs after the frame that started it all. Carter's foundation had provided the initial funding, and the company board, after several long negotiations, had signed off on the partnership. What they hadn't expected was how quickly the project would take off. Within weeks, requests came in from clinics, rehabilitation centers, and NGOs from all over the world. People weren't asking for luxury devices. They were asking for solutions. I stopped by one of the workbenches where Leon, the machinist who had helped me rebuild in secret, was tightening a bolt on a new prototype. He looked up, wiping his hands. Hard to believe, huh? A few months ago, we were working under flickering lights in a rented workshop and hiding from corporate spies, I added with a smile. He chuckled. Now look at you, Director Alvarez. The title still felt strange. I didn't feel like a director, just someone who finally had the chance to build without being silenced. At noon, I joined Carter in the meeting room. A pile of reports covered the table. Manufacturing costs, field test feedback, partnership requests. The Kenya trials came in, he said, handing me a folder. 94% success rate in rough terrain. Repairs done locally, 0 power failures. My throat tightened as I flipped through the photos. Kids using the adaptive frames to walk to school. Adults traversing muddy roads to reach clinics. These weren't numbers anymore. They were lives. Carter watched me quietly. You should be proud, Michelle. You did this. No, I said, closing the folder. We did this. Every person who believed it was possible when it looked like failure. He smiled. Still humble. Still learning, I corrected. That afternoon, a visitor arrived unexpectedly. Priya from my old company. She looked nervous when the receptionist showed her in. I hope it's okay that I came, she said. Of course, I said, motioning her to sit. How are things over there? She hesitated. Different. The board brought in an interim CEO. They're reviewing all active projects. Huxley, well, he tried to start his own firm. It's not going well. Word travels fast. I nodded slowly. Part of me felt satisfaction, but it wasn't joy. More like closure. I'm sorry it turned out that way, I said honestly. He wasn't always wrong, just blinded by ego. Priya smiled faintly. You're kinder than most would be. She paused, then added, people talk about you a lot, you know. Some as a cautionary tale, others as an inspiration. Let's hope the right story sticks. Before she left, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a note signed by several engineers from my old department. Thanks for showing us that good ideas don't die just because someone else can't see them. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my notebook. Later that evening, after everyone had gone home, I stayed behind. The workshop lights cast long shadows across the floor, just like that night months ago when I rebuilt the first prototype in secret. I traced my fingers along one of the new frames. Sleeker now, lighter, but still built on the same principle. Simplicity, reliability, dignity. Sometimes when people talk about revenge, they picture fire and destruction, making the other person lose what they took from you. But standing there surrounded by creation, I realized my revenge had already happened. I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply built something they couldn't ignore. The next week, Aura Labs hosted an open demonstration for journalists and investors. This time, I didn't tremble when I stepped onto the stage. Cameras flashed, but I didn't feel exposed. I felt grounded. 6 months ago, I began. A prototype was destroyed in front of a client. At the time, I thought it was the end of my career. But sometimes when something breaks, it's not a failure. It's a signal to rebuild better. I held up the new model. These devices are now being distributed to clinics in 12 countries. They run without power, without complex parts, and can be repaired by local technicians. That's the power of engineering that serves, not just impresses. The applause came slowly at first, then grew into a standing ovation. Somewhere in the crowd I saw Priya smiling, and next to her, unexpectedly, was the chairwoman of Huxley Dynamics, nodding in quiet approval. After the event I stepped outside. The sun was setting, painting the sky in gold and orange. The city felt lighter somehow, as if all the noise had softened. Carter joined me on the steps. "So," he said, "what's next?" I looked at the skyline and smiled. "We build. And this time we make sure no one gets left behind." He nodded. "That's a mission worth keeping." As he walked away, I stood for a long moment, breathing in the cool evening air. Everything that had once been broken, my confidence, my reputation, my creation, had been rebuilt stronger. And I realized that revenge wasn't the real ending. Creation was. Because when you stop fighting to be seen and start building something undeniable, you don't need to shout. The world will see you anyway.